Here's a quick tutorial how to trace out a pattern, sew it together, apply textures and physical properties that belong to that clothing item. So I'm going to create this tube skirt, and here we've got tube skirt pattern and another close-up where the seams are going. And this prefs file, that's a physical property preset. So I'll show you how to load that all in and how to recreate that skirt. So to begin with, I'm going to copy this fabric and call this waistband, and this is going to be skirt. If your garment has more parts, then just make as many fabrics as you need. Now on the skirt fabric, or actually on any of the fabrics, it doesn't matter to begin with, I'm going to load in as a texture by clicking on this icon here. I'm going to load in this pattern. And some more complex patterns, they have many parts to them, sleeves, close-ups, and back shirt for the shirt, the back part, the front part, colors, and so on. Then you can load in the separate patterns as you need them. If you're tracing out the color, then just load in the color pattern or the sleeve pattern, etc. Now I'm going to take my rectangular pattern tool, and I'm going to make a big square. Now you can see we have the pattern there as a texture, so that's great for tracing, but it's too small. So how can we scale it up to be the right size? Well, if we zoom up here, you can see that it has lengths on it. Now I want something that's straight, so this bottom part is a perfect reference, and it's 300. Perfect. So now I'm going to take my rectangular pattern tool, I'll click once, and I'll make the width of this 300, and the height can be anything, let's make it 100. And I'll just apply the white fabric onto that. Then I'll move this down somewhere here, and this is just going to be a reference to how big I need to scale up my texture. So with my texture transform tool, I'm going to click, and then I'm going to scale it up until this bottom line here aligns with the width here, which is 300, just like that there. And then once we get this part to be the same size, everything else will be the correct size too. There we go. So it's always important to find some point of reference. It could be the bottom of the sleeve, it could be a straight part up here, or it could be a side, something that's straight, not curved, and that you can easily align to a reference pattern. Now make sure when you scale it up or down, to always scale it from one of these 4 points here, not from this point because that's going to distort it, and also not from this point as that's also going to distort it. Now we don't need this pattern anymore once we have it all the right scale, so I'm going to delete that. And now all we have to do to trace it is take either a rectangular pattern tool or a polygon pattern tool if it was a pattern of strange shapes, and then click and drag out a rectangular. Then take our edit pattern tool, select this bottom line here, draw it down, and I'm going to apply this fabric onto it, and to see through it so that we can see the pattern that we're tracing, I'm just going to load in from my desktop where I saved it a ping which is totally transparent. So I just made in Photoshop an empty document for transparent background and saved it out, and now we can see through it so we can better see what we're tracing. And then to make the curve, I'm going to take my curve tool, curve point tool, and just curve it in. Now we don't have to trace the waistband, we can just look at the lengths and then just generate a rectangle of that length. So that's 600 by 50, I'll click once, make the width 600, the height 50. Now we don't need to trace out the other side, we can just symmetric paste it, copy and symmetric paste it. And you can see that they're symmetric to each other because of this blue line and this blue box around. So that indicates that this one is mirroring onto that one. So any changes you do here will be changed there. So I'm going to select this tracing box, get rid of it. And now I'm going to delete this texture too, so it's not invisible. And then right click, copy, right click again, symmetric paste. Now by looking at our pattern, we can see how it has to be sewn. These are seam lines, and the ones that are the same color get sewn to each other. So this side gets sewn onto this side, and this side onto this side. And you can also see this blue thing here gets sewn onto the waistband here, and this strip to here, and this length to here. And if we look at the next screenshot, you can see that's actually so. This gets sewn to here, this to here, and this pink part to here. And this side gets sewn to here, and as I said here, these parts get sewn together as well. So that's basically how you can read sewing. It's just the colors that match each other that are matching seam lines. So I'm going to arrange this around her with her arrangement points, and then take this to the back, then hide her arrangement points, and then on the skirt I'll delete this texture and then apply the skirt to the skirt fabric where it should be, and the waistband is on the waistband. Now I'll give it a different color, and unless I have a specific waistband preset, I usually just use the R cotton cloth preset, which gives it a nice sort of stiffness. And then for the skirt, I'm going to load in by clicking here or on this icon here. I'm going to load in the texture, or you can load in any texture you want, and then I'll tint it. Now let's take our segment sew tool. We can hide our texture so we can see it a bit better, and then I'll segment sew this to here, this to here. Now as for the sewing onto the waistband, you can see that this part here is sewn onto the middle, and then part is sewn to here and to here. And the reason for that is so that this part that closes in the back goes in the back and not on the side. Because if you just would sew like this and then simulate, we'll have to deal with that. But anyway, you can see here the part that will sew is on the side, and I want it to be in the back so you don't see it too much. So therefore I did the sewing the way I did it. So the easiest way, if we look at our pattern, is to simply divide this line into 150, 150 and 300. So I'll take my split line tool, I'll right click on the line, type in 150, do the same thing from this side, then take my segment sew tool again, sew onto here, and then starting here I'm going to sew onto here, holding down shift, then onto here. Simulate. And let's put her legs closer together before we simulate. Shift X to bring up her bones, Shift C to hide her clothes, and simulate. And then we've got to sew this together, and there we go. Then to load in any custom physical properties that came with the pattern for this garment, go on the corresponding fabric here, and then under physical property, click this open icon and load in your physical property. Double click it and you'll see all the sliders are changed. So basically that's how to trace a pattern, sew together, apply textures and physical properties to recreate a garment.